Society, what we have, and I will talk about that, and Tamara will jump in whenever she wants. The second part's the library, so we'll reverse roles. She'll talk, and I'll jump in. And the last three things are a lot shorter, but to just give some idea of the types of things that are out there. And I think some of you will see houses that you know. We've got some other resources here that came tonight, which will help us answer some other questions. And again, a lot of what you need to know is in the book. So make sure you pick up a copy of the book if you don't have one already. So let's begin then. We're looking at local and regional resources, both in the village limits and in rural properties in the 4 townships. And the resources tend to vary between the two. So we'll try to distinguish between those as we go along. So let's begin with what the Historical Society has available. And each of these 3 on the bottom of the screen here, you're welcome to pull your chairs up here in the more to the front if you want, if it gets hard to see back there. We got some space up here in the corner if you wish, but all 3 of these houses are part of our talk tonight, and we'll go through that.
Can you all move back closer to the screen so we can see the light on your face?
Like that? Okay.
It's a little dark up there.
All right, I'll try to do that. All right, so let me begin here. So again, these are the resource locations we're focused on, both here in Manchester, the first 2, the Genealogical Society of Washtenaw County, which has their library in Saline at the LDS Church on the north side of Saline. Very specific need there. Washtenaw County itself, we'll talk about what they've got available. The Bentley Library at the University of Michigan, and then an aerial photograph collection that we found. So let's go with that. So these things are all pretty much on your note sheet. This also should be on your note sheet. I've just kind of enumerated them here. The village and the township are different in one respect, and that is in township and village plat maps. So I'll show some examples of the plat maps that you can use. Things where the village did a very specific data gathering for maps back in the 1870s, which are extremely valuable. And then some of the other things we'll talk about here, and we'll show some examples of them as we go through. So let's begin with a village plat map. The earliest plat map of the village that shows individual homes is 1856. Now the map itself in 1856 was actually a wall curtain. It was a curtain that kind of rolled down, and it had the entire Washtenaw County in it, with every township individually on there. And around the edges were individual pictures that people could pay for of their homes, or a village or town could pay for to elaborate on their downtown. This is the excerpt of the Village of Manchester plat map. And this map is extremely accurate. It was very well done. It shows all the individual homes that existed in the village and what lot they were on in 1856. And it's accurate down to the point of showing what we call the footprint. So you actually see the footprint of the house here has got a little addition on the main part of the house. So the footprint and the location are extremely accurate. They also listed a business directory on the side here with numbers for the different stores down the front. That's fairly accurate because the business person had to pay to get on the map. So we don't know if all the businesses are there, but the buildings themselves are all there. And we've used this quite a bit to figure out what was there in 1856. So you can look on this map if you live in a village and see if something was on your lot. You can figure out what your lot is. You have your own deed records or whatever. You can figure out what lot you're on, what block you're in. And we have found this to be extremely accurate. The main thing it shows here is the effect of the 1853 mill fire that burned the entire north side of Main Street. You've still got all these vacancies up here. Nothing's been filled back in by 1856. So this is typically where we start. If somebody lives in the village, we can see if there was something there in 1856. There's an 1864 similar plat map, which is not of the same quality. It's not as good, and we tend not to use that one. And as you'll see here in a minute, there's some excellent things that came along in the 1870s. They give a lot more information.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What did it looks like structures north of the River Raisin, up the Ann Arbor Street? Are there structures or something?
Here?
No, south of the road. North of the river, but south of Ann Arbor Street.
North of the river. Up here?
Yeah.
It's just showing the bank. There's nothing up there yet. There's no homes built up there.
It just says river.
Yeah.
On the north part of it.
Yeah, those are letters. River.
River, yeah, you're right. Thank you. And the key thing to note here is that the street names are different. So the street that we now call Adrian was called Water back then. The street that we now call Clinton was called John Street, after John Gilbert. Washington was Washington. And Clinton Street was this one over here, which is now Macomb. So you have to be careful when you look at this thing. The street names may be different back then. If you paid money, you could get your name written next to your house, which is really nice. So here's William Baxter's house. You know, he ran the longest operating store downtown, 1830s to 1901. This is William Baxter's house right here. House is still there, kind of up on a hill a little bit. So this is a very good way to find properties that existed in 1856. Now, to change subjects a bit here, I know you can't read this, but what if you want to go out in the townships a bit in that time period? So you bought a farmhouse that's out in Manchester Township somewhere. You switch now to looking at the individual township plat maps. And the best tool we have for starting with that is what is called the General Land Office. When people were buying property from 1830 on from the U.S. government, they would go to a land office. For Manchester and Bridgewater Township, it was the Monroe Land Office. For Sharon and Freedom Township, it was the Detroit Land Office. And you would go there and you could buy parcels of land from the U.S. government directly. All of those patents have been put online, and all the data associated with them is online, and it's searchable. So as an example, a few months ago I had a phone call, email from a person who was looking for the Alvord family, A-L-V-O-R-D, in Manchester. And basically she said they came into the community in the 1830s from New York State, like many, many other people did. And she had a picture of an old farmhouse. And the question was, where were they? So this Bureau of Land Management, GLO database, allows you to go say, I'm in the state of Michigan, Washtenaw County, I need land patents for Alvord. Tell me what you got. And you can put that in, or you can search by township and range number. Manchester is 4 south, 3 east. You can also put in a section number. You can put it any different ways in there. And when you search for that, it will bring up the listings. And here we are with Obed Alvord. So we find a guy named Obed, that's his first name, Obed Alvord, bought 2 parcels, one in 1837, one in 1839, in section 22 of what is Manchester Township. So indeed, that family is here. We've got them located as far as a parcel of land. And you can also, on the same website, pull up the actual copy of the patent itself. So you can see that Obed Alvord bought these parcels on a certain date. If you're lucky, it tells you he came from Canandaigua, New York. So quite often it's good to see where they came from. In this case, it says Washtenaw County. So Obed Alvord was already here somewhere in the county before he bought this land. So we kind of struck out there, but indeed he did come from Canandaigua, New York. These are extremely valuable in determining when the person first came and settled on a piece of land. Now traditionally they would build probably log cabins to get started. The question became when they put their permanent house in. So using all of this, I pull up the 1856 Manchester Township plat map. That's again the earliest plat map that shows individual parcels, and just like the 1856 village, it shows exactly where the houses were. So section 22 is right in here, and here he is, Obed Alvord, and there's a little square for his house. So in 1856, he's got these 2 parcels, the 2 he bought back in the 1830s. He's got a house there. And if you look closer at the map, you start to see other people that we find out are relatives who are living near him. So we're able to identify that there is a house in 1856 at that spot. And these measurements are very, very precise. They use surveying techniques. They got it right down. This is Grossman Road. This is English Road. This is before Grossman went all the way through to Austin. So up here is all this swamp. So to get down there, you had to come down Macomb, down Sanborn, and down here to his house. But it is Grossman Road, just north of English. So to help this person out, I went out there. There's the house. That's the house today. Obviously an old stone farmhouse. It's sitting exactly where this plat map said it would be. And so I took a picture of it and I sent it to the person who was asking. I said, does this look familiar? And she came back with this. The Alvord family in front of the old stone house. So we got the right spot. So we know that we've got the Alvord family pinned down to that particular point. Now she can come out and go and drive and see the house exactly. There's the Alvord family in front of it. And she knows who these people are. This is Obed Alvord himself right here and his second wife, Eusebia. Okay? Obed Alvord died in 1871. So we know this picture is before 1871. The stone house is before 1871. Okay, so now we're starting to bracket it down. It's not likely he built this as his first home. He must have had some temporary type of home and then put this in its place. So now we have to start focusing in on when it might have been built. That's the entire family out there in front. She was thrilled to see this. Now she knows where that house is. Okay, so she started sending me other stuff. Obed and Eusebia, 1851, their wedding picture. She doesn't look very happy, does she? She is the second wife. She is the sister of his first wife. So he, 1850, his first wife has passed away, leaving him with 6 kids. And within 4 or 5 months, here comes sister in to kind of take over, and they had one more child between them. So we've been able to pin down where they were. The house is pre-1871. The Manchester Enterprise started in 1867. So I'm able to now go to the Manchester Index, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and see if I can find anything on Obed Alvord, particularly building the house. If you go before 1867, you have to go to a different source, and we'll talk about that also. But we were thrilled to find this part of it, at least. We got them pinned down to the house. The house is now owned by a woman named Catherine Wozniak. I never met her.
Oh, okay, she's in the yoga class.
Excuse me?
She's in the yoga class, Kay.
Yeah, we know her.
Okay, that's her house.
Whoa. Is she here tonight? She'd love it.
No, I don't know. I did not contact the current owner. I just heard all this back from the family. Here's the 1874 plat map. Now, again, I mentioned the 1864 was not very good quality, but the 1874 is excellent again. So here it says Obed A. Alvord Estate. Okay, so we knew he died in 1871. Now it's the estate. And Mrs. O.A. Alvord is living over here in another house. So I go back to my contact and says, do you know what's going on here? Well, of course, the kids started fighting. Who's going to get the house? So one or more of the kids are living here. They kicked stepmom across the street. Okay, this is one of the daughters, Jane Alvord. She's bought this property down here, Jane Cashman. So you start to put together the history of this thing a little bit. And we're trying to figure out, I said, now go back through your family records, which is a lot of it, and see if you can find something where it talks about Obed building this old stone farmhouse kind of thing. So we got the 1874 map. We've also got plat maps from 1895 and so on. They're listed on here. The Society has some of the maps. They're available in electronic form at the website that's on here. This Historic Map Works has everything. When you go on that website and you pull it up, you can't download the map without paying for it. But you can see the map. and you can kind of enlarge it, and then what they've got is they got Historic Map Works scribbled across it, but you can read the map, so you can research it and find something and then decide if you want to buy the map or not. Excellent website. And the library has full books of them all.
Yes.
Big books. So this is a great tool to start, using the village or township plat maps as a way to go about it. When I spoke with this contact on the Alvord family, and I sent her all the information, she says, oh, by the way, she says, one of Obed's granddaughters married into a family called the Jones, and they lived on 620 Main Street, and I got a picture of it. Okay? At the exact same time I'm working this purple, Sue LaRoque has contacted me. She's buying this house. And she wants to know, what's the history of my house? Okay? So when she first calls, I'll just show you, of course, the current picture of it. You all recognize that, far west end of town. Okay? So I got these two things going on simultaneously, and here these two families come together. There's an Alvord descendant having lived in this house. So I started working with Sue, trying to get the history of this house. First person I call is Jim Mann. Jim Mann knows everything back to the 40s, I would say. I said, Jim, who lived in this house? Going down all the people who lived in the house from current back to about 1940. And he says, back in the 1940s, it was owned by a dentist named Dr. Jones. And Margaret Alvord married a Jones. I think it was the father of this Dr. Jones. So now I've got these two things connecting together. And so she sent along this picture here. This is probably, I'm going to guess, 1915, 1920. So you have to start looking at the style of clothes they have and things like that. And it's still got some of the original stuff on it, but there's Margaret Alvord sitting there, Margaret Alvord Jones sitting there in the corner. So it's just been kind of fun to have these things kind of tied together, that you got two people independently researching their home history, and they end up with the same families coming together. So Jim's been a great source on trying to get the current, working backwards from the current. He told me this barn was in the Carrier movie. It's famous. If you watch the Carrier movie, you'll see that barn in there. So it's kind of fun, because if you look at the tracing back from now back to about 1940, you can see online deeds in Washtenaw County. We'll show that here quickly. You can fairly quickly put together the string of who owned a house back then. And then working with some of the other things we'll show here in a minute, we were able to figure out when the house was built and try to work forward. But we had a gap in there. And this Jones is the gap. How did Alvord tie in the gaps? And how did the Jones take over from the Carrs, who were living there before, who took over from the Cases? Very well-known names in Manchester, so we're still working on that part of it. Oops. So, still working with my contact. She says, well, I know that Alvord sold the farm in Manchester Township because they had disputes in the family, so they just sold the thing, split the money up. But my great-grandfather bought another farm somewhere in Manchester, and she says, all I know is that my uncle, who I audio taped years ago before he passed away, said, well, you could see the Alvord farm from Parks Place. And he says, it was somewhere on a road named Pleasant Lake. Okay? So I just kind of went on Wikipedia and put in Parks Place. Well, there's Parks Corner. And Parks Corner is the intersection of Pleasant Lake Road and Sylvan Road, where the Sharon Township Hall is. They call that Parks Corner because the Parks Farm and farmhouse is right there in the corner. So I'm thinking, okay, let's look at the map. So let me just kind of enlarge this a bit. This is not as good a resolution, but this is the Sharon Township Hall down here. Ashley Parks, this is 1915. Ashley Parks Farmhouse, R.M. Alvord. So there we go, we found the homestead of her grandfather. So there's R.M. Alvord, Guy Alvord. That's something they've been looking for a long time. But again, the plat map helped us find it. It showed where the house was. It's on the corner here. It doesn't show too well here. And Parks Place is, yeah, back then you could probably see it because there weren't any trees. So we were able to solve that part of the mystery. That here's the next branch of the family using plat maps again. And it's now a Beagle Club. So I drove out there up Sylvan Road. I really hadn't gone up Sylvan Road after Pleasant Lake. I mean, I thought it was funny. We're in the same area as the talk we did in November with a tornado. Remember the tornado talk? All these houses being smashed all through there?
Yeah.
So Ernest Raymond, all these, we're right in the same neighborhood. And I went out and I drove up the corner there, and the house is still there. It's now a Beagle Club, a Southern Beagle Club and something else Beagle Club. So I drove up and I took some pictures of the farmhouse, and they had no pictures of the house at all. All they had were pictures of a barn that used to be over here with a family in front of it. So she was thrilled as she saw a picture of the house. I traced its ancestry back into the 1850s, again using plat maps. And I said, it's now a Beagle Club. It looks kind of dilapidated and deserted. Well, I drove out there a few days ago, and there's this huge beagle thing going on. Trucks all over the place. And I don't know what they do with beagles. They just run around and hunt? But we did find that. So here's another case where again, the plat maps came in very, very handy. And here's the Parks Place, the original Parks home. This is 1830s Greek Revival. I mean, this is, to me, almost a masterpiece of a house. It's right at Sylvan and Pleasant Lake Road when the road starts to bend down. And part of the Alvord family lived there also. So they were thrilled to see a picture of the Parks house, that it's still there. And now they're going to contact these people and try to make introductions and so on. So our next tool comes back to the village, and this is what we call the Taylor and Bird map. So after the Civil War, Manchester's in a boom time, just boom, building like crazy. And what they were finding in their building is that the original survey markers from the 1830s were getting lost, getting disturbed. There were fights breaking out about where's my property corner. So the village council hired a man named DeVolson Wood from the University of Michigan to come down and resurvey the entire village. Every lot, everything. And DeVolson Wood is kind of famous in college education. He's the one that developed the concept of a 4-year curriculum. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. He's the one that developed that. U of M came up with that idea. And he developed the first engineering curriculum in the United States. So in higher ed, he's kind of famous. But he also commercially did this kind of survey work. So in 1870, he came down and he surveyed the entire village. He surveyed every single building, got exact footprints on them all, and collected all kinds of great information. So here we see just a corner. We're here right now. Here's Charles Kingsley's original house. I was sitting here. So we're at the corner. And where we used this particular map recently was the Christmas home tour back in December. All 6 homes were in the downtown Manchester area. And Teresa Benedict asked if we could do some quick evaluation of the history of these homes. So the one home was Beth Cruz, who lives in this lot here. And so we pulled up a Taylor and Bird map. Sure enough, there's a home there. This one says P.C. Vreeland. This one says J.S. Vreeland. It's father and son who own these 2 homes on those 2 lots. And there's a ton of information about them. They were blacksmiths, they were metal workers. So you look in the Manchester Enterprise, you can see ads, you can see all kinds of stuff about them. So here's a case where this map shows very precise homes, shows who the owners are, and to me this is one of the most valuable resources for being within the village and tracing your history, because you can pull off names, you can pull off dimensions and so on. Another example of a valuable asset is what's called the bird's eye view. So when DeVolson Wood did his surveying work, he partnered with Taylor and Bird. So DeVolson Wood's survey information went to Taylor and Bird, who made the map. Then they also partnered with this company in Philadelphia that made this bird's eye view. And so now you've added the 3rd dimension. You've got not only the profile of the house, but you've got the height of the house. And these things are extremely accurate. They show the window fenestrations, they show the doors, they show everything exactly as they were in 1872, as if a bird were up in the sky. And to me, it talks about in the book there, it was a lithographer who came in and walked around town and sketched everything and put it all together like this. And this has been extremely useful in seeing exact houses, how they looked, where they were. We're working on a project right now here. It was called Boyne Street back then, it's now Duncan. And there's a homeowner right here that's got a house that inquired about it. And I said, well, your house right now sits basically in the center of the block. But if you look at the bird's eye view, the house is skewed a little bit over to the west a little bit. So is that because that house got torn down and a new one built, or have the road widths changed enough? But I said, this map is extremely accurate, so we have to come out there and take a look at your foundation and see what you've got out there and see if something got changed out there. Again, DeVolson Wood and Taylor and Bird were involved in this thing, and for the sesquicentennial, you probably recall, we tried to mimic this. We hired Rodney Kidd here in town to put a drone up. And this is Macomb over here, and we figured out from the geometry that the bird was at Macomb and Sanborn up in the sky. But he was only allowed to put the drone up 400 feet. The FAA says 400 feet. The bird was obviously higher than that, so we did the best we could. We tried to shoot the picture and then realized afterwards that, well, yeah, it's very accurate in each house, but this house a mile away looks as big as the house does down here. So there was a little liberty applied there to the visualization, but we've used this a lot in tracing home histories here in town. You know, kind of blowing up an example of one. So here is the two Vreeland houses over here. Shows what they looked like in terms of profile, fenestration of the doors and windows and so on. Here again is Charles Kingsley's original house that sat here. Here's your original house, Laura, sitting right there. And this comes in really handy to look at what is there now and what is showing up in this drawing, and very often it's exactly the same. Nothing has changed on it. Again, going back to the thing we were looking at again, here are the two Vreeland houses as they were in 1872. Okay, so we got that much done. We can figure out the specifics on these houses. Here's another, we took another print kind of showing again just how, to me it looks magnificent, the detail they have on there, what these places look like. But we also did homes down here in the tour. So this is the back side of what's called the Brown home, which is a Gothic revival up on the hill. I'll show in a minute. We've got a little house that Margaret Shaw lives in. Okay, we trace that one down. The Balls live in this house here. So we were able to show these houses existed definitely in 1872. A large number of them were built between 1865 and 1872 because that was just, everything was going up like crazy in that period. So we get back before 1856, it gets more difficult, but you can really kind of zoom in on this time period here. So here is Margaret Shaw's house. And again, by great fortune on the map, L.C. Parsons, who's the one that built the house, paid to have his name put on there. So we checked out L.C. Parsons. He was a blacksmith. It's kind of a small house. So he got caught up in the building boom as it was going out City Road. Houses were being built out there. So he built a home, and the profile is basically still the same as it was back in that time period. So we were able to trace Margaret's house down. Now we're back to the Vreeland's house. Now once you take a picture of it today, there's a problem. This is original. Yeah, it's been sided and things. That is not 1870s. That is a craftsman style house. It's clearly 1910, late 1910s, 1920s. When we went on the home tour and I walked inside, I says, no, this isn't the original house. So we know that this is 1850s, 1860s, but that's probably about 60 years later. So now we have to go back, again using the Enterprise, go back through there, go back through Vreeland, kind of work our way forward and see, was there a fire? Or did somebody just tear it down and built this house in the 1920s because they wanted a better house? So sometimes these things don't quite work out as we thought they would. We get surprised. This is the house up on top of the hill on City Road, Jillian Farrington. She was on the tour. And we did research on this, and it's 1857. It shows up on a website. There's a website out there that's kind of like, it's titled like Weird Homes of Michigan or something like that. And this one's on there. And somebody has done some research somewhere and said it was built in 1857. And when we went on the tour, she says, yep, on the fireplace mantle, the date is carved in there, 1857. So we're able to trace that particular home down. And shortly after the home tour, I was contacted by the family that lived there for many years, a doctor.
Holstein.
Thank you. I knew he'd do it. Holstein family, they've contacted me. Now they're interested in coming back and seeing because they live well out of state. So I've been sending them pictures of this house too. So that's worked out pretty good. If you live on Ann Arbor Hill or the West Main Street area, the city and the village did a historic district study back in 2006. So all the homes along Ann Arbor Hill and along West Main Street, which is basically the Village Green area, are well documented in there in terms of their provenance. And then for the sesquicentennial, we did some of that again. We took some of that information out of there for a walking tour and then updated it with more current information in there. So if you're fortunate enough to be in one of those homes, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can access. This is an interesting one. This home is on Eisman Road at Austin. So if you go out Austin Road, east out of town, you're going straight east, and then you go through the big S curve to go north, then you straighten back out east to go towards Saline. Right at that corner is this house. And for many years it was basically an island because the old Austin used to cut through to Eisman, then come down and cut back out onto Austin. And so this house had roads all around it. And a few years ago the county came in and blocked that off and rebuilt the corner so you can only come out the one way. This is owned by Jim and Sheila Becker a few years ago. It was sold here in the last year and a half. And they contacted me and said, what can you tell about the history of my house? And we did the usual plat map beginning searches and started doing that. But just on a hunch, we looked at some of these books. There's a book called the Portrait and Biographical Album of 1874. We of course have the 1881 History of Washtenaw County. These things have biographies in them. You could pay to have your biography put in there. And if you're lucky, the biography says, I came here in 1832 and I bought this piece of land. I built my house in 1844, blah, blah, blah. The American Biographical History of Eminent Men and Self-Made Men of the State of Michigan. This weighs about 20 pounds. Okay. Caleb Brown was in there. We identified it was Caleb Brown living in Bridgewater Township in this house in 1874. And in 1874, in the Portrait and Biographical Album, he paid to not only write a biography of himself, get it published, but to do this. A lithographer came out and sketched his entire farm. Now, he always made these beautiful images of, healthy people, happy people, horses with carriages trotting by, horses, everything. But that's his house. So here's Austin, what is now Austin Road, coming down to what was Eisman, corner there. Here's Eisman coming across here, going back out down towards where Austin took off again. Jim was stunned. We found this. I says, if you look at the house now, it's obviously not the same, general class. The barns are all gone, the fences are gone. But he was thrilled to find this. So that is another resource. If your person in the 1870s, 1880s, this was a big thing back then, felt they wanted to preserve their history, they'd pay to have a biography written, and they quite often would say, I built the home in his case, 1844. Actually, it says in there, I bought the land, I built the home in 1844. And then later it says, I built another home up the road, which is where now Amy Riley lives. That was Caleb Brown's home. And it's all laid out, and I says, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for paying the money to do that. Makes our job so much easier. So we've got these books available, and some of them are online on Google Books, and they're indexed. So you can go online, find Google Books, search for the name, and it'll pop up.
Right. Where did you get that picture then from?
I think that's the 1874 Biographical Atlas.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where that one's from. I don't recall. Probably copied it from there. Is that one online, do you know? 1874?
That I don't know. I know we have a copy of one that has some of the
Yeah,
illustrations at
I'm pretty sure
the
that,
library.
I don't remember where I copied that at, but that's another resource that's available, are those types of books. Other resources here in town, Karen Genter left us a tremendous amount of material. All of her genealogical files were left to the Historical Society. Our acquisitions committee has been going through them for months. Huge family biographies, and there's stuff in there about homes that they lived in, so that's another source if you have a family name. The society itself has family history files, which are now down in the blacksmith shop, but it'll eventually be moving down here. Books like Old Manchester Village or Marie Schneider's 1967 book quite often have things. Another resource that just came out that's very valuable is the computerization of the Oak Grove Cemetery records. So a couple of years ago, Oak Grove Cemetery commissioned a person or a company, I'm not sure which, to computerize every person buried in Oak Grove and draw maps and all that. Now, it's true that perhaps cemetery records aren't directly going to tell you information about homes, but in the cemetery records you can see family associations, because quite often they're buried together, and you can see specific death dates, which then leads you back to the enterprise, which then leads you back into more information. So this is a hugely beneficial database, and it'll be on our website shortly. It has both a database of all the individual people, and it has maps. So we had a family group come in from, they're now in Minnesota, Montana, and a couple of other places, but they tie back to the Merriman family here, and they were looking for their great-great-great-great-grandparents who were in Manchester and wanted to go to the cemetery, and in 3 minutes I found them, and we can just drive right up the driveway there and go in and find the grave. So it's a tremendous resource, and it's not direct, but it does lead you to other things. And finally, the thing I want to talk about here is Alan Dyer's index. Those of you that knew Alan worked for years and years and years indexing every single issue of the Manchester Enterprise from 1867 to end of 1916. It is a phenomenal piece of work. There's one index that's names. The other index is places and businesses and things. And when you go on this index, you can, for example, if you go to Obed Alvord, it will tell you every time he's mentioned in the Enterprise. And so what Alan has done is it gives you the year, the month, the date, the page, and the column number where he's talked about. And if you got a death record, like an obituary, he's got a little D there, or some type of marriage record. This has been so useful because now all the enterprises are online through the efforts of Sarah and Fritz Swanson. They've developed their website. They took all the images from the enterprise, they put them online, so you can sit there at home, pull this thing up, and find some information. Or in this particular case, this is the electronic version. One of Alan's requests was that the electronic version not be widely distributed. He didn't want it published, so he gave me a copy with the proviso that I only clip out a particular name that somebody's asking about. When I first met Alan, he had all this index on his computer at home. That's the only place he had, on the computer at home. And one day I said to Alan, what happens if your computer breaks? I says, you got to back it up. So I got him finally to put it on a CD, a couple of CDs. Then I says, now what if a fire breaks out in your house? Well, it's not going to break out in my house. Well, I finally got him to give me a copy to take to my house, because he spent decades on this thing. And as soon as I got it, I copied and put a copy out in my barn in case my house burned down. I have an electronic copy, so I can clip out a name and send that to you. But he does not want the electronic version released. The printed copy is at the library. He did print a copy and it's there, and you've got it locked up in the cabinet. Very, very valuable document to find things, so it's a great way, and we'll show an example here when Tamara's talking about how this can lead you to information in the enterprise about when somebody was building their house. Okay, I'll take a break. Oh, one more. I think one more, sorry. How this was used. This is Mike Austin's house on Main Street. It's not a good photo because I came out and shot it and the sun was right there, but Queen Anne Victorian house on Main Street down by Worcester Park. And it was built by James Goodyear. And we were actually able to find in the Enterprise Matt Blosser talking week by week by week this house being built. The lumber guys came here, they moved the house, you know, so on, so on, so on. So Mike's got an exact record of the days over 8 months that his house was built. Another benefit of having that Enterprise Index was being able to find that specific information. So with that, I will turn it over to you and let you talk about the library.
Alrighty. Well, again, for those who don't know me, my name is Tamara. I am a volunteer in the local history room, usually just once a week. And then I also now am an employee at the library. So I am there usually 5 days a week. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to help you. I don't have the massive amounts of hours available to do a lot of hands-on research. I am in the process of personally doing, for my own interests, you know, some early starting of some research into some of the homes in the area based on a lot of the records and the resources that we have at the library, and then working out from there. We do have some maps, we have some atlases and some other resources that help you locate the properties, see if there was a building on it, and from there what you need is a name of a person. If you have the names of any of the owners, then you can start to kind of gather a story about the property. But up until you have some kind of names, then the resources at the library are a little limited. However, we do have some very valuable resources. Ray's touched upon a few of these because, like he said, a lot of the things that we have also are shared resources and they're online. This is the Manchester Enterprise. We do have microfilm. I've found that if I'm going to do any kind of research work, the microfilm is hard to see. It's in some cases it's in negative, so you're reading white type on black. And so I've discovered that really the online version is much more user-friendly, and you can blow it up. I don't know how many of you are suffering from farsightedness like me, but man, trying to read these little itty-bitty black or gray or smudgy letters, it's really hard to read. So at least with the online, you are able to zoom in and really get a good look at a page and get some more information. It's organized by decade, and then from there year, and then month. And so it makes it really easy. The way Alan has his index set up, it's very easy to locate the, you know, whichever reference that you're trying to locate. There's always people in the library. We're very happy to help if you want to come in. We have public computers where you can sit down, you don't have to be a member, and we can get you started. Like Ray said, we don't have the electronic version. That was entrusted to one man. But we do have the printed version, and I can help you with that, and we can get you online and get you rolling. Again, this shows the breakdown. It's all by alphabetic. So it's not January, February, March, April, May, June. That's not the way it's organized. It's alphabetic. So starts with the months, April, August, December, and so forth. But then from there it's dates, so it follows numerically. And this is a sample of, now if you can imagine trying to read that on microfilm, but with the, I don't know if I can do this with the...
Should be able to switch it. I'll do it for you. I find it easier to do this thing down here.
Okay.
Like that.
So there you go, yeah. So you can see the legibility.
Do you mind if I show a couple things here?
Yeah, no.
One of the things about Matt Blosser, especially in his earlier years from the 1860s through about 1900, he would write page 3. It's a 4-page newspaper. Page 3 was always a page with local stuff on it. So I imagine people back then bought a paper right to page 3. And he would put in there all kinds of local gossip, everything going on. And they were just short little sentences, and Teresa Heron told us one day they call it 19th century Twitter. It was 19th century Twitter, Now, Mrs. Smith is here visiting her sister. The Manchester boys who got in trouble in River Raisin said it was the Clinton boys who did it. But in those little Twitter things, they'll say, Jim Smith is building his new house. There's what you're looking for. When's that house being built?
Right here, he's repairing the
Yeah.
dwelling.
Charles Treffernan? Okay. Treffernan is repairing his dwelling on Water Street. So there's all this kind of stuff here. And one of the other things I found, this particular issue I pulled up at random. And this one has, it's the German Lutheran Congregation of Manchester is seeking bids May 6, 1882 for building a brick church 42 by 80 feet. Here's a request for proposals for Emmanuel Church. Stuck down there in a little column there. Okay, the property known as the Kent Place is for sale. A large house, nearly new, 2 good barns, blah, blah, blah. So you see all this information kind of buried in there that, again, Alan Dyer has indexed it. So if you go to the index and you look up the German Lutheran Church, it'll take you to this article that shows when they started getting bids to build a church. And you'll probably follow each issue as a church is being built as it goes along.
He was so thorough. If you do start to dig into that and you have a specific name that you're looking for, you'll find some citations will be more weighty than others, but it is really fun to read. Blosser, he received a lot of, or he promoted a lot of local farmers. So you'll see something like, so-and-so's peaches were delicious. You know, I really appreciate it, you know.
You got a free bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So when you look at this long list of references that you're going to be looking through, so you're looking for a specific family, and you'll find all these little gems in there, along with other things that may be more weightier things, like so-and-so is building a new house on their property. So you just there's one thing about researching your home is that it takes patience, and